Hi guys, so I wanted to make a video kind of showcasing the differences between new Colt and old Colt. So I have a 2005 LE6920 at the top, and then down here I have a 2022 production Colt SOCOM. So basically what I want to do is I want to go from the buttstocks and work our way to the front, go over the bolts, everything. At the end, I'm going to talk about my impressions, my thoughts, and which rifle I think is a better rifle and which I prefer. And stick around because you may be surprised. All right, so let's start off in the buffer tube areas. So on the older LE6920s, this one's from 2005, we have a 4-position buffer tube, and you can see, I guess you can't really see, but I'm not going to take it off, but it is a 4-position buffer tube, which is what the military actually still uses to this day, is a 4-position buffer tube. And we take a look at the staking. It is done with a machine, and it is done twice per mil spec. And then we'll take a look at the new Colt, and we can also see that, well, you can't see, you're going to take my word for it, but this buffer tube is also a 4-position buffer tube. It actually looks pretty much identical, color, everything. Castle nut looks pretty much identical. And we'll take a look at the staking on this one as well. You can see it's also a bunch of oil there, but you can see it's also done with a machine, and it's done twice per mil spec. They're using the same buffer tubes, the same staking job. Now, I don't know if Colt's making these buffer tubes, if they're subcontracting them out. I don't know. What I can tell you is the buffer tube that is on my AR15A4 actually has 13629 in the stamped on the buffer tube. I know this guy does not, and I don't think this one does. I never pulled the stock off, but I'm pretty sure that's not stamped with a C or anything on the inside of that. I'm not quite sure why the AR15A4 buffer tube has that stamped in there, but it does. So other than that, buffer tubes look identical. We'll take a look at the one from 2005. So up here you have a C, and you have the keyhole forging, and then we have the roll marks here. These are a little bit different. Obviously this one is 2005. As you can see, this is LE, and then you can see all the nice roll marks in there, and that'll be a big difference in the new Colt that I'm going to show you, the CR. But you can also notice that we do not have selector stop notches on this Colt. And all the old Colts, they never have selector stop notches. And the U.S. military on their M4s have selector stop notches. Take a look at the SOCOM, the CR production. You can see we have 13629. Again, that's just the government cage code thing. Colt can't really put their C's on there. Everything has to be marked with a 13629. You can see we have a safe and fire, but it is not roll marked. It is laser engraved. Everyone's just kind of going to the laser engraving, and you see probably of U.S. government roll mark there, and the safe and fire, which is all laser engraved. And also note the QR code. So the QR code started a while ago, before the pre-release, before CZ bought them. And it used to be up top here, and then they moved it down to here. I like both the laser engraving and the roll marks. Some people will, I think most people like the roll marks. I think the laser engraving looks cleaner, but I think the roll marks look more correct. They just look more military. They were used for a long time. So the roll marks, I think, look a little better. Now, I have an FN lower here that I wanted to show. And as you can see here, these are laser engraved as well. It's not roll marked, but it is a little deeper, and I think I prefer the laser engraving on the FN over the laser engravings on the Colt. Just think it looks a little bit nicer. Again, I'll show you the laser engraving on the Colt, safe and fire. I just don't think quite looks quite right. I will say that. I mean, it's fine, but let's go to the barrels here. So on the new production rifle, we have 13629. If I can get the barrel to focus, or the barrel, if I can get the camera to focus. So we have 13.629, MP, 5.56 NATO, 1 and 7. So let's see if that'll work a little better. There we go. So what to note here is the MP is 2 separate characters, and then we have the 13.629 opposed to the older rifle. And also I want you to notice on this side here, there is no F marked on the front sight base. So on this front sight here, there is no F mark, and I'll show you what the F mark looks like here in a second. So 2005 rifle. Let's see if I can get that. So we have a C, we have an MP, and see the MP is 1 character. It's kind of the M is into the P and the P is in the M. Then we have 5.56 NATO, 1 and 7. So the only thing that's really changed between the 2005 and the 2007 is the C, which is now a 13.629, which again, that is a US government thing. Colt can't control that. And the MP is different. Not quite sure why they separated the characters on the MP. Some people say it's because Colt is no longer making barrels in-house and that they're subcontracted barrels. I'm not sure. Couldn't tell you either way. But as you can see, this front sight base here, you can see the F mark right there. So the difference between the F marked and the non-F marked originally was the F marked front sight bases are for the flat top uppers. So both of these uppers are what they call flat tops. They can take optics, or you can mount a carry handle on them. They are supposed to have F marked front sight bases. And basically what that means is this front sight base here is a little bit taller than the non-F marked front sight bases. The non-F marked front sight bases are supposed to be for the fixed carry handle iron sights, so like the M16A1, the M16A2. So I know for a while people were giving Colt a lot of grief, saying about how they shouldn't have took the F mark off the front sight base because, you know, this gun technically wouldn't be allowed into the US government because it doesn't have an F mark front sight base. And I used to believe that, but I have something interesting that I want to show you. So I got this upper I put together. Got this from Wet Works. It is a surplus. Basically everything on here is surplus parts. And this barrel is made by Capco. You can see it has the Capco's cage code number. You can see the M and P are 2 separate characters, 5.56 NATO, 1 and 7. All these barrels are chrome lined as well. I didn't mention that, but they are. The chambers and the barrels all have chrome lining in them. They're just not marked CL or anything. So this barrel, you see what's missing from the side here? Yeah, there's no F mark on that front sight base. So these are government contract overrun barrels, and I'm going to inlay a picture. So Capco has had a long relationship with the US government, dating the whole way back into the 80s with the M16A2. These are government contracted barrels that were meant for the US government. They're contract overruns. So Capco just finished up a pretty big order for the US government for SOCOM barrels, along with M203 grenade launchers and some kind of impulse cartridge for the US Air Force. Capco makes a lot of stuff for the US government. So I believe this, like I said, I believe this was a barrel that was meant for the US government. Oh, one other thing that I forgot to mention was these barrels, these older barrels on the Colts, they actually, I'll roll in a picture, they actually have a date stamped in the barrels. These Colt barrels on the new CR rifles do not have the date code on the barrels for some reason. I don't know why, but they do not. This Capco barrel has a date stamp, a date code in the barrel. And I'll roll in a picture of the one from 2005. It's actually marked 3 of 2005, so it's pretty cool. So March 2005. I'm not sure why there is no date code on the newer Colt rifles. Again, maybe they're outsourcing their barrels. If they are, I don't know if Capco's making them. I don't know if Roscoe's making them. Either way, they're a military grade barrel. So, and we'll kind of get into the whole outsourcing thing if I remember here. just went ahead and pulled the bolt carrier groups out just to save some time on camera. So the top one here is the one from 2005. See, the staking looks pretty good on that. We have the C stamped in the carrier, which is really nice. But when we go to the bolt, the MPC is laser engraved in the bolt. And I was looking, and it looks like a lot of them back then were laser engraved, if not all of them were laser engraved in the bolt. And I was actually really surprised because people are giving Colt now such a hard time with their laser engraving. So I expected these to be stamped MPC in the bolt, and they're just not. So I was a little disappointed with that, to be honest with you. So let's take a look at the 2022 production, you know, the Colt's not Colt bolt carrier group. Staking looks really good on that. I will say I think maybe the one from 2005 is just a smidge more aggressive, but not by much. And we have the electro penciled C in the side of the carrier, which again, now that I know that Colt laser engraved the MPC on the bolts, why do I care if they laser engrave the C on the carriers? I don't care. Let me wipe this off because it's going to be a little hard to see. There it is. Alright, I just wanted to wipe that off. So you can see the really nice MPC mark that is actually stamped in the metal. And I really like that way better. Now I will say that these bolts do not come with white paint on them, and the extractor is not 13629 date, or is not marked 13629. Whereas this carrier, or this bolt, the extractor is actually marked with a C. However, on this upper here, this actually came with a surplus bolt carrier group. Well, kind of surplus. Carrier is a surplus toolcraft from 2009. The bolt is a military contract 2004 dated, or 2024 dated bolt from Colt. And I just wanted to show you this real quick. But you want to take a look at the bolt there. It's marked MPC, but you see the white paint, and the extractor is marked 13629 on this. And again, this bolt is Colt from 2024. And but what I really wanted to show you was the MPC looks the same on this bolt and on the bolt out of the commercial rifle. Now I'll roll in a picture of the extractor. That's marked 13629. I was really excited to see that the bolts on the government contract bolts were stamped MPC the exact same way that the bolts were stamped on the new commercial rifles that are coming out of Colt. That means they're using the same bolts for the government contract. And in here, like the commercial rifles that you can buy off the shelf. So I thought that was pretty cool. But I think the bolts are actually made in-house at Colt. I could be wrong. I don't know that, obviously. Just assuming, since seeing how the military issued bolts are the same as the bolts that are inside these rifles. So one more thing I wanted to show you about this upper here, or this rifle here. You have, it's marked, you actually have like C on the hammer and the trigger, which I think is cool. That kind of stuff is marked C. And then you can see the lower, how it has that web in there. You can see the web is still the same. I changed the fire control group out on this one, but I can tell you that the new production rifles do not come with C marked parts on the inside. It's all S marked parts for Schmidt. I think, in my opinion, not much has changed here. Does Colt use some subcontracted parts nowadays? Yeah, possibly, but you can find, or possibly they do, but you can find articles dating back to like 2014. People were actually using the union up there to try to sue Colt because Colt was laying people off because they lost the government contract, so they were using contracted parts. So they weren't needing as many employees, so they were trying to lay off some of their employees because they didn't need them. So they were using subcontracted parts from 2014. And yes, so from like 1994 or 96, I forget when the M4 was adopted. So from that time to 2012, you could buy an M4 and it would be the same exact M4 that you would buy off, or that they would send to the military. And that is cool. And I really don't think these rifles are that much different. I really don't think so. I think the quality is still there. Now, I do want to mention, so this upper on the SOCOM here didn't actually come like this, how it's marked 13629. So this is actually the upper that it came with. And I've been noticing, for whatever reason, on the SOCOMs, they are not liking to cage code the uppers that come on the SOCOMs. I actually just had a couple people comment, said they just got SOCOMs, and they are still not cage coding the SOCOM uppers. Now my CR6920 came with a cage coded upper, and my AR15A4 came with a cage coded upper, but for whatever reason these SOCOMs are not coming cage coded. I don't know why. Now what I will say is this is the upper that came with it, and I think it's interesting because people will sit here and say that if it doesn't have a 13629 on it, then it's not a Colt part. It didn't pass through Colt's QC, and it's a subcontracted piece of junk part. But I would like for you to tell me the difference. If I would tape this here up, you to tell me the difference between this upper and the one that doesn't have a cage code. The markings, this one even has the M4 on it. Everything is the exact same. They're the exact same upper, literally the exact same upper. The only difference is one's not cage coded. I think when Colt was first sending out the rifles in 2020, after they took their 6-month hiatus because they were working on military contracts, I think they sent a couple of them out without the M4 there, but that was a short-lived thing. I don't know why they decided to do that. I haven't seen that since then, and like I said, this is a perfect example of a Colt not cage-coded upper that is literally still a Colt upper. It just doesn't have the cage code on it for some reason. There's no difference. I mean, no difference. If anything, the paint looks a little more sloppy on the T-marks on the cage-coded upper than it does on the non-cage-coded upper. So if you get some parts that aren't cage-coded, don't feel like they're not Colt parts. Don't feel like they're substandard, because I don't think they are. I really don't. The only reason I switched these out was because I wanted this M4 here to be exactly what was issued to the U.S. government, and it needed to have the cage code up there because I wanted this to be a clone. So that's why I switched those out, even though, well, I don't want to get into the whole cloning thing because there is some non-correct, clone-correct parts on this rifle just as far as the markings go, but there's just nothing you can do about it. So I prefer, now I took these rifles out and I shot them both side by side. I'll roll in some footage, and I actually prefer the new SOCOM. If you look, the ejection pattern on the M4 up here, the 2005 upper, or the 2005 rifle, was a little erratic. Some was ejecting to the 4 o'clock, some was ejecting to the 3 o'clock, some ejects to like the 2:30. Not with this girl here. She ejects to the 4 o'clock all the time, unless I'm using like super hot ammo. It's basically, I mean, you can bet money on it that when you fire this, you're gonna have a nice, it's gonna spit the brass out in the same exact place. The only time it doesn't, like I said, if you're using super hot ammo, or if it's AAC ammo, because that crap is just super inconsistent. As far as the markings go, like I know some people have had a fit with like my AR15A4. I'll roll in a picture. It says carbine on the side of the lower. The problem with that is Colt's always kind of done that. That's not a new Colt thing. So like, let's take a look at this rifle here from 2005, and you see where this one's marked, law enforcement carbine. What is a law enforcement carbine? It's not an M4 carbine. So they did go away from the M4 carbine mark. I think they're kind of getting back to that. I do know if you buy a CR6920 OEM1, for whatever reason, those lowers are still marked M4 carbine. So if it means that much to you, you know, you can go that route. I don't mind it being marked carbine on the lower on my AR15A4. It really doesn't bother me at all. AR15A4 is not correct for like an M16A4. So it's not like either of those would be correct. So it's not a big deal. And like I said, there was a Colt Sporter. There was an A3 tactical carbine. There was Colts. I'll roll in some pictures. There was another carbine or some weird marking. Colts always just kind of mark their rifles however they want to. So I wouldn't get too butthurt about that, honestly. I know everyone wants their M4 markings and blah, blah, blah. If you want an M4 marking also, these SOCOMs, they come with the roll stamp, the U.S. property roll stamp. And you will get that with every SOCOM. You will get that U.S. property marked M4A1 carbine. So if you have to have that mark, just buy the SOCOM. And that's the way I would go. If you're looking to buy a new Colt, I would get a SOCOM. Honestly, these rifles are awesome. I've had about 3,000 rounds through this. Oh yeah, speaking of that. So I did have to experience Colt's QC. I had to have this bolt replaced. This bolt was replaced because this one for the SOCOM was replaced because it had some kind of gas leak and it was failing to lock back. Not all the time, but unless I was using super hot ammo, I would get the occasional fail to lock back, and if I would not hold it 100% tight on my shoulder, it would fail to lock back. Like if I kind of held it one-handed and fired, it wouldn't lock open the whole way. I did some testing. You can go back and watch those videos if you were interested in my Colt playlist. And I got Colt to replace this bolt carrier group. Everyone's freaking out right now saying that's why Colt sucks. But there's a guy, I believe his name is Jeff. I believe his YouTube is Modern Tactical Shooting. He is a Green Beret, or was a Green Beret. And if you go and watch his YouTube channel, he has a bunch of videos on like his time with the M4A1, Block 1, Block 2. And I believe in his Block 1 video, he states back in 2003 how they got a brand new shipment of Colt M4A1 rifles, and none of them worked because the chrome was laid improperly in the barrels, and also something to do with the extractors. And that was also when Colt was still using the old extractor springs. That's kind of a whole nother story I don't really want to go into. Anyways, they had to replace the barrels, and I think SOCOM started using the extra power recoil, or the extra power extractor spring. The point in telling you that story is Colt mass-produced rifles, no matter what rifle you like, occasionally will have problems. You can go on Google, type in BCM issues. In fact, I saw a Geisley video the other day. A guy got a Geisley rifle. I don't know how old the video was. I don't know if it was like brand new or if it was a couple years old, but he got a Geisley rifle. Had to send his upper back because his bolt carrier group was doing the same exact thing mine was doing. And Geisley hand built him a new bolt, sent it back, no problems. It just happens with production rifles. It's just the way it is. Like I said, I prefer the new rifle. I would not pay, I mean, I got this one pretty cheap. I think 800 bucks isn't a bad deal. And it's surplus, so it's got some history to it. But I wouldn't just go and spend $1,400 on a used rifle because it said LE. Screw that. I'd rather just buy a new Colt rifle. That's just me. But like I said, it is cool that this being GWAT and, you know, same production lines, it is very cool to have this rifle and the history that goes with it. So anyways, those are my thoughts on new versus old Colt. And as you can see, the differences really aren't that drastic, especially when you look at it through the context of, you know, we switched to the 13629 for government contracts, and that was done well before CZ took over. That was done back in like 2014 or something, 2012. I don't know the exact date of when they went from the C to the cage code, but that was a long time ago. And as far as the laser engraving, well, that's not new either, because they were doing that before the CZ took over. And I mean, look at this FN, it is laser engraved as well. So one last thing I wanted to touch on was the CR prefix from the LE prefix. So everybody freaks out and thinks that the CR stands for civilian rifle. It's not what it stands for. The CR stands for Colt Rifle. You can go on their website and you can look it up. And it says on Colt's website that CR stands for Colt Rifle. Back in the day, whenever the M4 came out in the 90s, Colt did not sell the M4 to civilian channels. They sold the M4 to the US government, and they sold the M4 to law enforcement. Civilians could get the AR-15 from Colt, but they had to go through the LE channels to get them. So my thought on the whole where the LE comes from is that comes from back in the day when Colt was only selling these to the LE distributors. Now fast forward, Colt stopped doing that and they sell to the civilian distributors and law enforcement distributors. And I believe that is exactly why Colt went from the LE to the CR. It has nothing to do with anything other than they sell this rifle to everybody now, not just law enforcement. So that's why they went to CR, stands for Colt Rifle. And again, they went to that prefix pre-2020. It was like 2017, 2018. Now I think at that time, they still kept, like, if you would go and buy a LE6920, those rifles were still marked LE, but if you bought just a strip, or if you bought just a lower without, you know, just a complete lower, that came CR prefixed. And these SOCOMs always had the CR prefix on them because they were released, I think, in 2018, somewhere around there. So they always came with the CR prefix on them. So anyways, those are just my thoughts. I like both. It is cool that this has all the C marks all over it, but is it really that big of a deal? No, it's not. Does Colt contract parts? I'm sure they do, but they're all still quality parts. And Colt's been subcontracting for a long time. And you got to remember, before the M4, Colt kind of lost contracts with the government when the AR-15A2 or the M16A2 came around. So from the M16A2 to the M4, you know, I'm sure Colt was contracting then as well, subcontracting parts out. You know, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that Colt has always done a little bit of subcontracting here and there. I also wanted to mention that Colt has military contracts. They have a lot of foreign military contracts right now. They have a big contract with Israel. I know that, I'll put a screenshot into that. I also know that Colt has made rifles for Ukraine. And I believe Colt is also going to be getting a contract, or has a contract for M4A1s for the US government. Now, I don't know if that's how many. I don't know any more details on that. I'll put a screenshot in. We'll see how that goes. Even if it's not this year or right now, Colt will go back to making M4A1s for the government. As soon as something happens, something big kicks off, Colt will be again making US government M4A1s. It's just a matter of time. FN more than likely can't handle the load all on their own. You know, if you have these old rifles and you go to bed at night thinking your rifle is so much better, it's really not, but that's cool too. So anyways, those are my thoughts. Thanks for watching. Have a good day.